of six.
of six.
And we put out a prompt you did a couple hours ago, just to,
Hmm.
get some garner some interest in some topics and things that wasn't like like a Q&A thing like we did a few weeks back, but it was just, it's always helpful to hear what people want to hear about,
Yeah.
instead of just assuming all the time. And me and you can talk about pretty much nothing forever.
Yeah.
So having some sort of direction of things that are going to be directly helpful to the people that are listening is always kind of fun. So we got a couple of some good feedback that I think will spin into some good conversations today. But looks like we're okay. We're live on YouTube now. Sweet. We're good.
Sweet.
So if you're on the YouTube stream, welcome to YouTube for the first time. This is a new
Thanks.
thing for us.
Yeah, I like the idea of reaching out periodically just to catch a pulse of what people are wanting.
Hmm.
You know, do you stick to the majority and just beat every topic to death that's already been beaten to death, or
Yeah.
I think you're a guy like myself. We've kicked some music back and forth the last few days, but whether it's music, books, art, uh, hobbies, I think that we're both inclined to kind of look through the weeds a little bit. And
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that for whatever reason, people are valuing the conversation and opinion and discussion of things. So definitely want to respect that and talk about things that people that are listening are interested in hearing
Hmm.
our opinions on. And I would probably venture a guess that it's not because we answer necessarily every question with, perfect advice or a directive. It's more, it's just two situations of two men and how they've
Yeah.
navigated similar things. I mean, that's really,
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody about this exact concept the other day. I'm guilty of it as anyone, in people being able to give you the correct advice for your situation, your need, whatever, for years. And it's almost like until you actualize that through failure, through lessons, whatever, then it's like, oh yeah, so and so said to do this, but you don't always take that advice right in the jump. So that's kind of what this
Right.
podcast to me feels like, is it's just two more bits of information that can help you form your own. It's not, you do things differently than I do
Hmm.
things differently than you do, but we're both somewhat on a path to the best lives that we can live, and navigating that. And the best part about that is the potential for our story to help someone else. That's
Exactly.
really the genesis of all this. So
And the sharing of, and like you said, there's obviously two perspectives, and coming from, we are different obviously in a lot of
mhm.
ways, but we're more similar
Sure.
in more ways. You know what I mean? And so I think that's why it's easy for the two of us, even just speaking for myself and having a conversation with you, like, it's not difficult for us to get into stuff quickly and have actual conversation. We don't have to like beat around any kind of, you know, chit chat or anything like that to actually connect
Right.
and get something out of a conversation.
Well, and the other thing too is I know that you're a guy that thinks about what you say. I think about what I say. And actually, another question that kind of ties into this part right here was, somebody
Mm-hmm.
said, "Do you think that you and Ross would have been friends without the internet?" Well, simple,
Mm.
plain and simple, likely not. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that often that I'm in Idaho. It's not that often that you're in Kentucky.
Yeah.
But I guess in the chance passing, I can just tell you, because of who I am and how I am the most extroverted introvert ever. Like my
Yeah.
job, my translation through a screen is much different because I never shut up, than in person where I'm very quiet. So this is kind of like
Hmm.
that, imagining the audience is naked. The
Right.
medium of a screen somewhat provides that effect for me. Is it like there's enough distance that
Sure.
if you piss me off or I don't want to do this anymore, I'm just going to close the screen.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't know that I would have approached you, necessarily. One, we have a little bit of age discrepancy. Two, you
Yep.
probably wouldn't have been in a dive bar. So, you know what I mean? It's there's just
Just
a
the
few hurdles.
circumstance of the environment.
Yeah, there's just some hurdles there that probably would have prevented us from easily becoming friends in real life.
Sure.
But I do think that had we had given that opportunity, it's a no brainer. I mean, we get along
Yeah.
great. We
Yeah.
we talk about a lot of cool stuff off the air, which I think generates good
Mm-hmm.
conversation on it. But as a 40-year-old man, I am I am quick to admit that I am sure of less than I've ever been,
Yep.
as far as my breadth of knowledge and whatnot. But at the same time, if I say something, I've put some thought to it, I've put some time to it, but I'm also willing to back on that if presented with new information.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not afraid of anything that I would say to you, because most
Yeah.
everything that I say are things that, I mean, at least I have beat myself to death trying to understand why I believe these things,
Yeah.
and I just think it's a cool opportunity. And I say that every episode, but I do. It's a cool
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to talk to you, and you always have great insight. So let's get it rolling.
Let's do it. We had two that were kind of good genesis points for talks today. So it doesn't really matter which one we hit first, but the one that I received had a lot to do talking about men's health hormones, TRT, kind of that realm, because he's just kind of now at that he's in his mid 30s.
Hmm.
And so it's a conversation he's starting to have a lot more, and was just wondering, like how do I begin to navigate this? He's not he went and got blood work done, and it's actually not his testosterone levels weren't actually terrible. They may
Hmm.
be a little bit on the lower side, but I mean, and you could say, well, what doctors are saying should be numbers probably is a little lower than what it should be anyways.
Right.
But it wasn't like some drastic thing where he needs to do this. But he also understands there's a lot of lifestyle things that he could improve that would naturally boost those numbers. So he's like, how much of this do I do before I look at this? And where you've got the current experience
Hmm.
being on TRT, and I don't. So I think we can obviously handle that a couple of different ways. But
Sure.
that was, there was direct question. It was just like, hey, this is kind of where I'm at. I don't really know how to navigate this yet.
Yeah. Well, I think if you wanted to touch on the more natural side, some of the things that
Mm-hmm.
you can do in
Yeah.
absence of a doctor or TRT, I think you start there, since that's you do more of that on
Yep.
a day to day basis.
Yeah.
I
And
can
we
touch on the
do.
TRT.
Yeah, for sure. So if we're talking natural stuff, I mean, it's really funny because there's no like almost anything I would say in this scenario is stuff that most people already know anyways. It's not like some unique, secret squirrel information that is going to help you naturally boost T. Like I could write an ebook that says that, and
Right.
sell a million of them, and it's just going to be basic stuff, right?
Right.
But a lot of the things that we're talking about, when I go through these with guys that are coming through my various coaching programs or whatever, like almost number one every time is sleep.
Mm.
Like most guys sleep is garbage, especially if like there's family and kids involved, which there's really no way around that, but you can optimize it as best as you can. So if there's things that you can do, like making the temperature of the room cooler, a lot of the guys that I've read and seen, a lot of numbers are like that mid to low 60s is kind of
Hmm.
like a good sleeping temperature. They've got things like the chili pad that you can put on the mattress or whatever if you want to spend the money and get those. That like you can like temperature control your mattress, which are pretty wild. Or you can just like open a window if it's winter
Or
time.
get a
you
$9 fan.
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
You don't have to drop $1,500 or whatever it is to get one of them
Yeah.
chili
No,
pads.
I've slept on one of those before, and they're amazing. But it's just like
Yeah,
that. I think it's important for us to remove hurdles too. Because if you say get a chill pad,
exactly.
that's obviously the Rolls Royce equation. But like you said, as
Exactly.
simply as opening a window or having a box fan. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I depend on. So
I live in Idaho in January. It doesn't take much to get a room cold. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of crack it open an inch and it'll be
yeah,
into the low 60s within the hour.
no doubt.
So but yeah, so the sleep is oftentimes the conversation that we have first because of the inconsistency in the quality of the sleep, rather than focusing always on getting more. Like that's
Mm,
always what everyone's assumption is like I just need more. And that might be true if you're getting like 5 hours a night, right? But if you're getting like 6 to 7, but it's just a crappy 6 to 7, we can do things to improve the quality of that, like by doing dropping the temperature, like getting rid of blue light in the room, or whether it's having a meal a little bit further away from bedtime. I mean, it just depends. Like there's all kinds of things that can be helpful. And usually when we're having these conversations, it's like, dude, try one of these things for the next like week and see if it helps. And if it does and
Yeah.
you want to keep it, great, then we'll add one more thing on. We don't have to do 7 different things on this in one night and expect it, to know which one's making the difference or not. So
Right. Well, can I
the
make a point
sleep
about that
conversation.
real quick?
Yeah, totally.
I think that's a great point too, just in general for fitness or diet or really any implementing any change in your life.
Yep.
I had a really cool it was home ec, but it was foods class,
Nice.
and Carol Cannon was the teacher's name. She was great, very elegant Southern lady. Kind of remind you of one of those kind of the girls. I don't remember what it is, but it's you learn how to like cross your legs and sit up straight and walk with a book on your head.
Yeah.
You know, one of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like she reminded
Yep.
me of that type. So we were making bread, and bread's a delicate thing as far
Hmm.
as the process of making and rising and all that stuff. So she was like, a lot of times for new people into cooking, she's like, if you give them the recipe, they can see it, but they don't have the nuance of what those things mean and how to do them, and like you don't get good bread. She's like, but if you
Yeah.
teach somebody how to, crack an egg, or you teach somebody how to sift flour, and you master those things, and then you come back. And I think that's very important. When people go on this New Year's resolution kick, it's I'm stopping alcohol, I'm stopping smoking, I'm going to the gym 4 times a week, I'm changing my diet, I'm going to bed at this
Yep.
time. It's not one of those things that fails you. It is the combination in the incapacity to have the same schedule, the same routine, and just trying to pick and
Yep.
really introvert your life completely. I think it's much better if you say, look, this week my focus is eating better, and do the things that are going to be success laden first. You
Sure.
know,
Hmm.
sleep being one, that's the easiest. But don't say I'm going to quit smoking, because first, start
Right.
building some momentum of success and belief in yourself. So sorry to interrupt there, but I think it's
No,
just
that's good.
important to really break it down so that people lose that idea of changing their life in 30 days and
Yeah.
start looking at living a better 30 years.
Yes.
I think that is the win.
And focusing on like the really granular thing, like the thing that
Hmm.
you're going to be able to know you can accomplish, or like that's the hyper focus. We talked about this when we were talking about my experience shooting the recurve. Like
Sure.
for the longest time, is like, I was hitting targets and I was having good groups and I didn't know why. So I would focus like, okay, I'm going to make sure I feel this one thing every time. And that way I know if it's this that is doing it or not. And then if it's not, then I can move on to the next thing, whether it's how much that's canted or how, whether I'm feeling it
Sure.
on my hand or whatever. Like there's all these little things that you can like essentially just experiment with
Hmm.
and see if that's going to be the thing that makes the difference or not. And it's hard to do that when you're trying 10 different things at once that are all
Sure.
new, and so
And what's the
with
net yield of each individual thing?
right.
That's the other concern too.
Yep, exactly. Try to find the thing that's going to be essentially like the highest leverage thing
Hmm.
that you can singularly focus on. So the sleep thing is always the first thing, and almost to the point where I say we're going to not even focus on anything else for a
Hmm.
little while until we can at least get this a little bit more dialed in. Not perfect, but get some sort of system where we're at least sleeping better. And that does a ton already. There was some study, I can't remember how long ago it was, but they had, and they had done it on a group of men, and the ages were like in their 20s. So they were young men. They weren't like old men who were already having declining testosterone numbers already. But it was like after even just 3 nights of, I think, less than 6 hours, it was something like 10 to 15% drop in testosterone in the men, even just after like 3 or 4 nights or something. It was less than a week
Sure.
of less than 6 hours of sleep. Does like that has that much impact. And you think about how people just have done that for decades or
Yeah.
years, and it's one of these things you're talking about. It's not going to be fixed in 30 days. It took you 17 years or 20 years of crappy habits and crappy sleep to get to this point where now your numbers are tanked, but we can do small things here to gradually start to build those back up. And so the sleep was always the first one. The next one, if we tie it into the nutrition point, That's obviously a big one. Uh, Having saturated fats and cholesterol
Mm,
is from everything we've seen recently, like cholesterol being one of the things that helps build testosterone in your body.
mm,
So if you were to listen from any sort of medical or popular health advice from the last 40 years up until about 8 years ago, you probably wouldn't have gotten that advice at all,
sure.
because of cholesterol and eggs and everything be bad. Except now eggs cause blood clots, according to an article I saw this week. So it seems like there's always something to do with zip
Yeah.
it.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lose my privileges anymore. I'm not gonna even go down that road.
We're on YouTube now. We'll get shut down.
I know. I had to silence myself on that one. But um, I think it's important just to give people a 101, kind of a dumbed down version of nutrition. One of the things that is
Yep.
so important to your body from a protein, carbohydrate, fat standpoint is the protein is the utilization, repair, and building of muscle. Carbohydrate is an energy source, and fat can be converted to an energy source, a source for warmth, a source for generating hormones and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
when you are putting protein into your body at a consistent basis, it is not depleting protein from the muscle tissue to satisfy bodily function. Just like fat, when you are putting fat into your body at a consistent rate, meal by meal or day to day, your body doesn't say, oh, wait, I need to hold on to all this extra fat that is being put into my body because there's a constant stream of it coming in. I don't need to
Mm-hmm.
store it. So that is where some of the carnivore keto-ish phenomenon comes from, is the
Yep.
idea that we're going to satisfy the protein needs for our muscle. We're going to utilize fat so that we don't store fat, and we're also going to train our bodies to utilize fat as energy. I have done that, and
Yep.
these are more short term solutions for
Yep.
me, as far as all meat. I've even done vegetarian and pescatarian weeks.
Yep.
Just post competition, huge gut distress, trying to gain 15-20 pounds over a training cycle.
Yep.
And then it's like, I need to let my body rest, just do some vegetables,
Give your gut a
reintroduce some
break.
fish, reintroduce some eggs, and then get back to chicken, and then finally beef. So when you're looking at this whole argument of what do I eat, well, you need to understand that simple equation. Protein at basically at a rate of zero point 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. That's where you'll start getting a lot of extra calories too. If you're 300 pounds and 100 pounds of fat and you're eating 300 grams of protein,
Mm-hmm.
well, you're getting an extra 400 calories of waste.
Yeah.
So you just got to start weighing these things out around your lean body organism. That's what you're trying to feed, grow, and refine. You're not trying to feed the fat that's already there. So
Yep.
don't base your calories around stored fat. Base it around your lean body tissue plus about 5 to 8%. And
Mm-hmm.
if you do that, you'll be covering yourself on protein at 1 gram per pound. I still think the 40-40-20 equation is universally good for
Yep.
most people.
Yep.
40% of your diet should be from protein, 40% should be from carbohydrate, and 20% should be from fat. If you're an athletic, active, normal, habitual person,
Mm-hmm.
that rhythm right there around your lean body mass is going to be a recipe for success.
Yeah, and you made the point as far as losing weight. That was actually going to be kind of the next thing that I wanted to bring up. Anyways, I mean, we're talking about all these things you can do, but just losing body fat will help with the production of more testosterone. Like you just do not produce as much when you are carrying a lot of body fat. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things kind of lend itself to losing body fat, right? Which is going to do it. But just the act of having less body fat will help improve those numbers on its own.
Yep.
So we can talk about all these like things, right? And I know that it's been kind of a running joke um, where you've been you've been going after all the ice bath people for the last few weeks,
It's
which
a
was
hierarchy of
hilarious.
needs.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. And that was
it's
my
not the
point. Like,
ice bath.
exactly.
It's not the ice bath that I have beef with. It's the fact that people can adopt these reels, or
Yeah.
performances, we'll call it,
Mm-hmm.
where they show themselves doing these things, and it's very easy. Like, I eat raw liver, I take an ice bath, I do these things. Those are 15-second sequential videos that they can release as content. It
Yes.
doesn't necessarily mean that the other 23 hours look like they're presenting to you. That can be achieved in a lot of manipulation, you know, like as far as they can be telling you that they're doing all natural diet and they're over here taking thousands of dollars worth of supplement or, you know,
Yep.
performance enhancement drugs, whatever.
Yep.
So I don't necessarily run to the people that are trying to sell me the ice bath. I
Right.
run to the people who are living a healthy life and have found the ice bath as an alternative step, you
Yeah.
know, and that's what I want people to encourage and decipher as well. It's like, if you go just start taking ice baths versus doing nothing else different in your life, I do believe you will have some positive benefit from that effect.
Yep.
Do I think it is going to radicalize, revolutionize, and revitalize your life? Absolutely not, singularly, but as a
Hmm.
part of a program and process,
Right.
100%. And
Right.
it's getting those things in order and dedicating the time appropriate to the order of those things.
Yeah, and it's to the point now where I think it's just because now, I mean, and now there's, I don't know, a dozen companies that make them, right?
Hmm.
Like that build, like they're like $6,000 to $12,000
Yeah,
tubs, you
$250
know.
at Tractor Supply. You can get a water
Not
trough and put
even
ice in.
my 100-gallon one was like $110. Like
Yeah,
it
well,
was,
I go for the
you know.
nice one, Ross. I want the nice one.
And then
Okay,
I
you
the
piece
one
of
I had
shit. I want the
the
nice one.
the one I had before that was a chest freezer I got from an old man on Craigslist that lived
Yeah.
down the street that was moving.
Hmm.
And he's like, I'm moving into a nursing home. I can't take this freezer with me. Do you want to give me $20 for it?
Yeah.
And it was like all, rusted out and dirty and old, but it turned on. And so
Yep.
it kept it cold. And I'm like, this is perfect. I literally don't, that was the first one I had. So, I mean,
That's what
these,
Terrence did. He got one
yeah,
on Craigslist in South Africa,
yeah.
$50
So
US. And
you talk about like removing obstacles, right? Like
yeah,
you obviously look at the Morozco one or whatever it is that they sent Joe. Like you literally look at that, it's like $12,000
yeah.
thing. Like
Mhm.
even the ice barrel is almost $1,000, and all that is just a barrel shaped Rubbermaid thing,
Well,
right?
34 degrees of water in in a tank, or 34-degree water in a, piece of Rubbermaid cooler is 34 degrees.
It's still
You know,
34 degrees.
you know,
Or
I
go find
that's
a stream in January. Like, it
yeah,
doesn't have to be even anything that you're going, like, that you have to build or do. Like, I mean,
yeah,
it depends on where you live, but there's all kinds of streams and rivers around here that, like, again, it's January. They're all going to be cold. I
yeah.
don't have to like turn on a cooler or a chill machine to
You
get
pay
into
your
that
taxes.
temperature.
Go get in the water. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's my land anyways.
It's my land.
And then I guess the last thing that and this was more, all these are things that uh I do my best to practice frequently, right? I'm not,
Mm,
these aren't things that I can say like I do all of these every single day, but I know that when I do these things, I feel a difference. And so that's what I generally like to share with the guys I coach or whatever. But the other one that I did feel made a difference for me was the early morning sunlight, and
mm.
getting that, as much, obviously, just in general, as much sunlight as you can get is going to help. But I really just enjoy getting that early morning sun, and I'll just like walk outside and literally just stand there, and like that's how I wake up. Just go outside and
Mhm.
stand there as the sun's coming up. Doesn't have to be like some weird, you know, you're doing some movement, meditating, and like doing
Keep
this
going,
chant
baby.
thing.
Keep
You can
going.
literally, that's right. You can literally just stand there and like breathe and drink coffee with your shirt off in the sun, and then it's cold, so you're getting some. I mean, it just feels good. But
Mhm.
the setting of the circadian rhythm, getting that early morning sun, goes into that first point about having better sleep, and
Mhm.
so all of those things kind of working together are building this equation. But any one of the things, I think people will notice a positive effect from. But again, if we're talking about doing something like bringing up testosterone levels or whatever it is, it's not something that you're gonna be like, I did this for 3 days, I'm going to go get tested again and see if that worked. Right?
Right.
Like you gotta do this over a period of weeks at the minimum. And then and I know you get yourself tested fairly frequently.
Mm.
So but I mean, there's a block of time where it's like, I need to know if this works, and that's not going to be a couple of days.
No.
So you just like a regular training program, you're not gonna build a bunch of muscle in a week and a half on a training program, even if the training program is great. Like you have to stick with that for time, right?
Yeah, I think that one thing that excuse me. Um I don't remember the doctor's name, but Dr. Eric Serrano,
Mm,
he had referenced this. The body heals 70% faster than it degenerates.
Hmm.
So, and that's by like our hand. So if we're drinking
Sure.
alcohol for 3 years, if we stop for 2 years, we'll essentially be back at the same point,
Okay, I'm with you. Yep.
or I'm sorry, I think if you stop for a year, you get the same benefit as if you'd never drank at all. Something like that.
Okay.
I mean, don't quote
Sure.
me, but just keep that idea in mind.
Yeah.
And that's the way my body really, I'm in a different kind of example because I was chasing human performance at the elite, world class, world champion, best in the
Right.
world type level. So I never got to ride the roller coaster of natural, regression of my own testosterone.
Right.
After my injury, I don't want to speak too heavily into specifics I mean, I don't care to tell you every single thing I did in long form, but that's not this episode.
Right.
Um, but I was using 3 to 4 times a medical dose of testosterone. I was using some other agriculture steroids, for horses or whatever,
Mhm.
and all of those things, you know, did exactly what they were designed to do: make me stronger, made me recover better. They work very well. They are medication. So whenever I was injured, what we discovered is that, well, not that we discovered, but we applied information that um, exogenous testosterone injections can agitate the body and create new infection.
Hmm.
The body can go into some kind of defensive mode because of the injection. Whatever. I don't understand
Sure.
all of it. Again, not a
Yeah.
doctor, but that was one of the things that they told me because that was in line. I would have a surgery. I had 19 surgeries throughout a 4.5 year period on my left knee. I would be on my back for 4 weeks at a time post surgery. So you're looking at like 76 weeks on my back in the course of 4 years.
Yeah.
And what we found out is in those 4 weeks, I was doing no exogenous testosterone. I was doing no hormone replacement whatsoever. And actually, I didn't know anything about that at this time. I was still in that mindset of being a competitive power lifter. So every time that I would get clearance at week 5, I started my testosterone again. And by week 8 or 9, I was suffering from infection again.
Yeah.
So don't know if that was causation or correlation, but
Sure.
it made sense to stop for a while. And really that's when I started to see my body heal and get healthy and stop having surgeries. So for about a year and a half, I was completely off testosterone, trying to uh, regenerate my
Hmm.
own, and it just wasn't happening. I mean, I was taking DHEA, I was taking triglyceristis, I was doing a lot of the men's supplement stacks,
Yep.
and it was like a pulse. It would go up for a little bit and come down, and go up a little bit and come down. So lo and behold, I was at a movie, and Evan Foster comes up to me and he was like, "Hey, man, I know you from powerlifting." And we talked for a second. And he was like, "My dad does TRT. He's a doctor for TRT for hormones." Said, "I think you should come by and just let us do a blood panel on you and just have a consultation." Well, I don't know why. Chance meeting of this kid, but it was the
Hmm.
right thing because I was not in a good place.
Yeah.
And that was also when I'd gone through, I think there was a physical trigger of my injury and whatnot as far as depression. And
Yep.
then I think that there was the hormonal imbalance that was maybe
Yeah.
exacerbating those feelings. And so I go to the doctor, and, he checks me out, and he's like, "You're not really as bad as I expected for the things that you shared with me that you've done to your body."
Sure.
So we had a good starting block. And actually, his whole goal with me, and again, this is a case by case basis. Each patient has their own goals and vision, but I told him, I said, "I want to live to 75." That was a goal of mine because no man on my dad's side of the family's lived past 73. So wanted to make that kind of just a long-term vision. And he offered me three medications that would work cohesively and kind of line me out. So he offered me testosterone. He offered me an anti-estrogen, and he also offered me HCG for um, semen production.
Hmm.
So, and that's basically the most fundamental cocktail that a TRT, hormone replacement doctor, will put you on. That is the fundamental operation of the reproductive system for a man. And there are other options there too. I mean, you can go into the Botox side of his clinic. You can go into the peptide side of his clinic, the growth hormones and those kind of things. I literally just wanted to stick and have stuck to the very base essentials.
Mm-hmm.
So therapy dose for testosterone usually in most men runs around 200 milligrams of cypionate per week. When we started, I was a little bit more than that. I was around 325, 300. And then as my body started acclimating and started working a little more efficiently, getting some of the estrogen down and balanced,
Mm-hmm.
now my body's starting to like, oh, this feels good. Let's assist this process.
Mm.
And as of right now, I just came back. He lowered my anti-estrogen because my body's doing really well there, and we are stuck at 200 milligrams per week of cypionate. So I'm down 125 milligrams from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and the 200 milligrams puts me in a not only in a testosterone score range, but also in a free testosterone range that is not just on the high side of normal. It's actually just above that. But I've always had somewhat high testosterone. Even when I was younger, I told you when
Mm-hmm.
I was 18, 19, I failed that piss test and I had
Yeah.
never taken anything but protein.
Yep.
So, my body tends to be a little bit more productive in that area. And through his help and really just getting a quarterly blood work, getting, kind of just a hormone profile every 3 months, and then every 6 months getting a full blood panel.
Yeah.
And, going up on 40, knowing that there's cancer in my family, there's some heart disease in my family, if you have insurance for the cost of a copay, it's just peace of mind. And
Yeah.
literally the one thing that started to become very attractive to me, it's not that I fear cancer. It's not that I'm just sitting here waiting for the diagnosis of it, but it's been in my family. So there are markers on a full blood panel that, if in January there's nothing, everything looks good, and in April everything looks good, but oh wait, in July there's a marker, chances are the potential for harm is only a few months old. So the proactive nature of it is very
Yeah.
appealing to me on all fronts. Plus, like I said, I have a goal. If we can get my testosterone fully functioning to never have to see Dr. Foster, that's the
Mm-hmm.
ultimate goal.
Right.
But I also know that that's an impossible goal. I want to optimize myself as much as I can,
Mm-hmm.
but I also want to be 70 years old, getting up and walking and doing activities that I like, possibly hunting, hiking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just be a normal male. So if I'm in this process, I don't want to fall at that average line. I want to fall inside the line that is medically ethical, that is within the argument of health as well as performance. I don't just want to be a healthy slug.
Right.
I want to be highly active, um, feel good, look my age instead
Yeah.
of looking much older, those kind of things. Um, yeah, it's a great process, but I think that goes doctor to doctor, case by case. Um, I could not recommend Dr. Foster enough in Lexington, Kentucky as Foster Medical. He does do outreach, as far as like he'll work with you if you're
Mm-hmm.
abroad, or not abroad, but somewhere else.
Elsewhere.
Elsewhere. That's a good
So,
word.
uh, so I have a question because and this is just me not knowing and being ignorant on a lot of this stuff.
Hmm.
But when you had said that now your dosage is dropped down to 200, uh,
Hmm.
that means that you're still keeping the same total number, and your body has made up that difference to get you to that point. Is that how
That's correct.
that
Yeah.
works?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So
what I
just
thought.
like just like when you have that I can't remember. Oh, it's the polycystic ovarian syndrome for women,
Mm-hmm.
the PCOS.
Yep.
And a lot of times their metabolism is stunted until they can get some of that excess body fat off. That
Mm.
is, it becomes very, very difficult. They have that adipose retention around the gut area,
Mm-hmm.
and until you can get some of that PCOS, I guess, range of fat off the body, they're never going to be able to lose weight. And there are
Right.
actually drugs like Adipex is one. I coached at one time. I coached a group of like fitness men, women. Like I wouldn't call it CrossFit. I would call it like plyometrics and CrossFit.
Okay.
But I had 5 women in a group of 5 women and 5 men who had all taken Adipex, and every single one had the PCOS. And
Wow.
these are not overly large women. These are just women who were like probably 20, 30 pounds uncomfortable with
Yeah.
themselves. And they were having I mean, dude, we worked hard. They were dieting and they weren't losing weight. And only when they were all later diagnosed with the PCOS did it start to make sense. So,
Right.
in the same way, I had to do some rehabilitative work to my body as a whole because it could not process any better than it was without exogenous
Sure.
testosterone. And then as my body started to heal, quote unquote, um, the process of testosterone production, semen production, all those things started to streamline once again. I mean, I was a 350-pound man at my last surgery at probably, high 20% body fat.
Yep.
Like I was not the same 330 pounds I was before an injury.
Right.
So I had to do a lot of that metabolic work, that fat reduction before my body would even do the best it could with the external medicine.
Mhm.
It's like you have to help this. It's not just a wonder drug. The more you put into yourself and the more you work for this medicine, the more
Mhm.
the medicine is going to work for you. And that was pretty cool that he told me that up front. He was like, my goal was to get you down to a truly just therapeutic level, not like,
Minimal.
just trying to figure out how to keep you healthy. So we've done that. I mean, I think this was year 6, and at about 18 months, and again, so 20 years of lifting, 20 years of, well, probably 12 years, 13 years of steroids and testosterone and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And then in about 18 months, my body started lining itself out again. So the
Yep.
body's an amazing thing. It wants to be well. It
Yeah.
wants to feel good. So
That's
when you
the
start helping
natural
the
state.
body, it it pays you back in spades. And I just can't speak highly enough of it. I think there's a terrible stigma around it. I think we celebrate when women, you know, go get their hormones looked at, addressed, and in control, we'll say. And man, it's kind of been taboo. It's tied to the dirty guy that cheated in sports and all this
Yep.
other kind of stuff. It's just not true. I mean, I've never, even at my biggest, I was an asshole, but I never had what I would define as roid rage. I'm actually probably calmer now than
Mhm.
I've ever been, and I'm on testosterone. So
Yeah.
I think that is by and large, I think whatever you are, it can magnify. So if you're an asshole, if you're angry all the time, if you're abusive to your spouse, or you're, a super good guy and motivated, I think it will cast you further in that direction. It's not an excuse to be anything more than you are.
So when we're talking about these, you know, I guess you said 6 years, right? So you were 34 on
Yeah.
since beginning this like kind of current phase
Yep.
of stuff,
34,
right?
35.
So around, I mean, it's obviously going to be dependent on the individual, but what kind of things would you recommend as far as I mean, the blood work is like like easiest, right? Like because that's going to
Yeah.
give you the exact data,
Hmm.
right? So just going and getting, I mean, which tests specifically do you say, we need to make sure we get these ones? What are like the ones that we're actually looking
So
for
you can
to
do a
be?
couple different things, and
Yeah.
this is the lingo that we use with
Yep.
Dr. Foster. I just say I want a hormone panel, and I
Okay.
think that strictly just checks testosterone, free testosterone, estrogen, all those things,
Yep.
and then a comprehensive is twice a year, middle of the year, end of year, and
And that does everything like cholesterol and
yeah,
lipids
yeah, it
and
goes. It's
everything
pretty.
else.
It
Yeah.
checks. I know there's a marker for kidneys. I know there's a marker for liver,
Yep.
heart. Things like that. So, you know, peace of mind in a health regard, as I've gotten older, have respected more and more. I understand that early understanding of health, as far as if there's a problem, means a higher ability to heal.
Yeah.
So that's what I would recommend is, even if you can't afford a doctor, even if you can't afford coaching, you can get a blood test. And I do know that there's some online coaches. Ross, you may do this. I don't know. But even if you can't afford an online coach for a one-time blood assessment, like you can go to a I don't know, like an urgent care or something like that. But they have some blood draws like
Yeah.
that they'll do this for you. It's about $100. And then I think I've seen some coaches advertising between $25 and $50 just to decipher what
To
that
analyze it.
means. Yeah, just to give them
Yep.
some feedback. Or there's tons of YouTube videos out there that talk about it, and you can kind of
Hmm.
self-educate. It's what you can do with the means that you have. And but I don't think that there's a better. way forward for like a true statement of health, because people can look healthy and be terribly toxic. So I think from an internal standpoint, that blood test is about as good as you can get,
Hmm.
and within anybody's budget.
Well, and that's the difference is the outward appearance versus what's going on the inside, and that's like
Sure.
we assume because someone because someone is lean or they've got a lot of musculature and they look fit, that they must be really healthy,
Hmm.
right? And like we've made the analogy like a handful of episodes back, like if you're training to be super fit or training for performance, like you're going to sacrifice actual health
Yeah.
in pursuit of those things.
Well, and
Even though,
also how you define health. Is health
right,
just your physical body? Is it, or is it your mental well-being, your physical body, your spirituality? You know, is it the coalescence of all that? And as I've gotten older, I definitely think so, because I was never, in my prime, shredded as far as that, but I was elite at what I was doing.
yeah,
And that was probably the least healthy I was from a mental standpoint. I had an altered view of myself, an altered view of the world because of the altered
hmm,
view of myself. Um, I was empowered by my skill, by people. I was able to reinforce behaviors that were terrible because, I can do this thing.
yeah,
So I don't know that I just quantify health as going to the doctor and getting a blood test and getting TRT and being healthier in the
right,
body sense. It's, to me, the hormones play such a vital part to the upstairs portion, your
yep,
brain, the way that it works. If you think that you can be fully operational, fully healthy mentally when your body testosterone or your body hormones are out of whack,
yeah,
um, yeah, it's just a recipe for disaster. I think they just, every system on Earth, down to our bodies, are these intricately designed, beautiful, detailed, and everything is meant to work together. So,
hmm.
healthy body, healthy mind, happy heart. I think,
And we you said too several minutes back, but it's a concept that I don't think a lot of people understand, is that the body's natural state is health.
yeah, for
It's
sure.
all of the extra things that we do that take us further away from that, and that
Hmm.
is physical, mental, all of these things that we're either choosing to take part in, or putting ourselves in positions where we have no choice but to take part in, right?
Right.
And I would say 99% of those are completely under our own control, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that like a lot of people don't want to hear is, well, these were the direct results of maybe not a decision you even remember recently, but one that you have definitely made, put you into this
Yeah.
position, or a stack of decisions. And so when we're talking about like all these things that we can do to improve a lot of this stuff, you, and I've made this analogy before as well, like you don't really realize how how bad a position you were in until you start feeling good.
Hmm.
And then like when some of these things start clicking, and maybe you're doing some of these things that on the natural side, or you go the medical route, but you start to feel like what you're supposed to feel like, and then you look back and you're like, dude, how did I ever do that for so long,
Well, dude, I'll tell you right now. I got a CPAP when I was
Yeah.
powerlifting, and I got it kind of back channel. I had a well, I won't say a friend, he's a piece of shit, but I knew a guy that was working in a medical field, and he was working with insurance, and he was working with CPAPs, BiPAPs, and essentially what would happen is some of these CPAPs would be purchased front hand, and then the model would update, and the insurance would only cover a newer model, so he would have these overstocks. And come to find out, he was wheeling and dealing on those, which is fine. I mean, I paid for it, I got it, whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that he was doing some shady shit until he screwed me over and two of my friends. So fuck that guy. Anyway, I get the CPAP, put it on. Obviously, first time wearing it, nearly suffocated. I hated it, and kind of stuck it on the floor for another month. And dude, this is how bad it was. I was 325 pounds, strong as I was ever been. I would wake up in the morning sometimes kneeling beside the bed, like in a prayer position on the bed, like just with my head down asleep, because I could actually stay upright and breathe that way,
Yeah.
because I would almost like suffocate myself out of the bed. And
Goodness.
I mean, 4 or 5 nights a week I'm waking up like that on my knees.
Yeah.
And I would, I would be in the bed 9, 10 hours, and my watch tracker would say like an hour and a half of sleep. And I was so miserable. I was so and lack of sleep clouds your judgment. I think all of these things, when I talk about making mistakes in my life or bad choices, I think all of these things are contributors to that. I mean, being in the bed for 10 hours and getting what your watch quantifies as an hour and a half of sleep every day, you know.
Hmm.
So finally I just committed to it. I'm going to do this thing. I went from the nasal mouthpiece to just a nasal piece, and I slept for 5 hours and 15 minutes straight. I got up off the bed, and literally I took the mask off and just started bawling. Like, I actually got up and felt weightless,
Hmm.
versus like every morning was a true test to get out of bed. Like, everything
Yeah.
hurt, everything sucked. Like, it was just a misery that I can't. And I've never really thought about this that much. Like, I've never talked about
Yeah.
it that much, so
Yeah.
I don't really have much of a descriptor for it, but the way that I felt was so bad. And it was all for an hour and a half, 2 hours in the gym, 4 or 5 days a week. And when I started to feel what one day felt like, and then I felt what a week of wearing a CPAP, and then a month, and oh, by the way, I've lost 100 pounds since I started wearing my CPAP. I don't know that I was in such a shape that my body would have responded to the stimulus I was giving it as far as trying to lose weight
Yeah.
without the sleep effect.
Yeah.
So I agree with Ross. The sleep stuff, the TRT. I mean, the natural course. However you go about it,
Hmm.
you, somebody's got to be fighting for you. Like,
Yeah.
you've got one body. Nobody else is able to do this for you. So it is really a unique, challenging, worthwhile journey if you can get your head around it and you can commit to the things. And like, even still, CPAP is not my favorite choice of like, it's not, there's nothing sexy about it. There's nothing fun about it. There's nothing cool about it. But when even now, I don't necessarily need it. But when I've got my ass kicked 3 or 4 days in a row and I need a good night's sleep, I throw it on, and
Mm.
it is immediate impact. So you've got to find the things that work for you, and really commit to them. Like I said, the first time I tried it, I hated it.
Yeah.
But then I just got so much more miserable in that next month and a half, that the only option it seemed that I had was going back to it. And sure enough, it fixed it. So it's
The
tough.
well, and the thing that is op positive, obviously, but optimistic about those types of experiences is having that when you realize, like, wow, there's like that much of a difference and how much better I feel, like immediately, just that experience alone is that's like I have to do this again, because
Yeah.
I understand how good I feel now. And so having those types of moments, if it's a sleep thing or if it's any of these other things that we've talked about, when you start to feel good, you want to keep doing that.
Hmm.
And that's what building momentum and fostering discipline is all about, because you realize this is the way that is actually going to make me feel better and help me be whatever it is I'm trying to be, uh, wherever I need it in my life. If you start having those positive experiences, that's the biggest indicator of further success, is having a little bit of success, and then you just
Hmm.
keep building on that every time.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it took trying a couple of different masks for the CPAP. It took
Yeah.
trying some different dosages for my TRT,
Hmm.
even some of the supplements that I take. I was on antibiotics for 4 years, pretty much continuously, because of my knee.
Yeah.
So my gut health and the gut biome, when I started trying to get healthy, prevented basically any attempt at that. I could only eat very, very limited foods. Cream of
Yeah.
rice and banana, and some stirred in peanut butter was like where I started. So I certainly didn't love that. I
Yeah.
certainly didn't, enjoy that process of, I actually got to a point where I had a love hate thing with that. Like, I was so hungry that I wanted to eat it, but I hated it.
Yeah.
And, but that was so gentle to my stomach that within a few weeks I was able to start adding, okay, it's not no longer cream of rice, it's white rice. It's no longer just a banana, it's some eggs and a banana.
Right.
It's these little things. And I think that is the hardest, like for example, for I always come back to archery. But when I got that second bow, the wood bow from Wana, I wanted to shoot it just like my other bow.
Yeah.
immediately. I never
Hmm.
gave it the due process that I'd given the other bow, shooting at 5 yards and then 10
Hmm.
yards and so on. I wanted to shoot at 30, right? Well, that's kind of how our body works. Like whatever changes you make, you can't jump in 10 steps down the road. You have to start at the fundamental basics and find your groove with whatever that change is. And, that's, we talked about that with Cam Hanes. You see him inspiring a generation of people to go run marathons. Well, I would prefer to think that more people should probably just get up and start walking a mile,
Yeah.
and let the marathon be, that's the goal that got you started. That's the goal that you're going to work towards, but start where you need to, start where you are,
Yeah.
and make those small changes. One change at a time will change your life.
And that's kind of the whole point of the things that we were talking about on this in this conversation so far is
Mm.
like there's obviously like master's and PhD level courses of nuance that go into every individual thing that we talked about, and we covered like 8 things in a matter of less than an hour. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so there's all kinds of rabbit holes to give more information, and it just depends on where you are and what you need. But the idea is any of these things can work, right? And pick one
Yeah.
and try it out for a while and see if you notice any positive effects. And if not, scrap it, try one of the other ones. Like do something until you find something that works, continue to build on that, because even like the very few things that we talked about on when I was mentioning like the natural side of things, we didn't even get into like the environmental stuff like
Yeah.
plastics and EMFs, and I mean all of these things that do have an effect. But you got to think what's the like the essentially the lowest hanging fruit situation that I can take direct control over today and not
Mm.
stress about like, oh, I need to get like EMF shields for my windows, like stuff that we can make a lot of easier decisions today and
Mm.
build on that. And then maybe you do get to that point once you realize, look, I've taken this to as far as I can take this. What's the next thing that'll take me that 5 extra percent? And then from there, the 5 extra percent. So obviously there's way more to like depth of these things than we were able to cover, but the idea is just do something of them and it
Yeah.
will have a positive effect.
Well, I do think it's somewhat irresponsible, to say, "Oh, do this and this and this and this, and then you're going to
Yeah.
fix your testosterone and you're going to be
Right.
happy and everything else." Um, there's enough of those guys out there that are telling you how to live your life. If you want that, I probably wouldn't listen to this. But
Right.
the thing I will say is, like, start looking at commonalities. If
Hmm.
10 people are using a CPAP that are overweight and they all start feeling better, losing weight, chances are you don't need them to tell you. The the
Hmm.
story's right there. And
Hmm.
all of these other things. Ross is so correct in how much control we actually have over our decision making when we know what those decisions lead to. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, because of the pace of life, because of the lifestyle that is presented through so many mediums, we have this laissez-faire, carefree, like, oh man, I'm just in the moment, like I'm just living it. And that's fine too. Like I do prescribe to that.
Yeah.
I do think that you do have to be presently aware of where you are in your life and what you're doing and the people that are around you, but you don't just blow like a leaf in the wind to success in business or in
Hmm.
athletics or in life. Or you can't just blow like a leaf in the wind and love your spouse the way that you should or love your kids the way that you should.
Hmm.
You have to be the wind. You have to push the leaves. And for me, that is decision making, that is planning, that is, and I am good at these things in regards to myself. Like
Yeah.
I can deconstruct myself and plan and orient myself. I struggle with some of those things in other areas of my life as far as the order and the direction and things like that. But I started with myself, and
Hmm.
slowly the things in my life that were struggling because of my inability have gotten better. They're not perfect. I'm not perfect. But I think taking the ownership of your life, that whether your life is where you want it, beyond where you want it, or not where you thought it would be, all of those statements come somewhere from the fact of the life that you've lived. The choices that you've made, the doors you've walked through, the hands you've shaked, the people's faces you've spit in, the backs you've stabbed, all of those things lead somewhere to where you are. And I think that, I was talking to my buddy Jordan about it. He's like, you can't just put out good and get back all bad, and I think
Hmm.
that's kind of the concept of the plus one too. I'd made so many bad choices and the hole was so deep I had no idea how to get out of it. But
Yeah.
I decided to call my dad, or I decided to you know
Hmm.
not look at life the way that I was. Whatever those steps were, like you can dial a phone or you can
Yeah.
change your mind about the setting that you're in. And sometimes that's as simple as change is doing the right thing now.
Yep. I want to take this before we close into a maybe would get a lot of people heated argument discussion because it's fun.
Good.
Because we're talking about testosterone and you mentioned athletes and stuff. So I'm
Mm,
just going to ask you
yeah.
this as your opinion:
Okay.
who is the best baseball player of all time? Because you're a baseball guy.
Yeah, I know I love baseball, and that's why it poses such a hard question. Obviously, Ty Cobb, Pete Rose come to mind.
Hmm.
Two guys that I love the history of and respected tremendously. I know Rose has had some issues with the game, but all around baseball player, man, Bonds.
That's what I was, and not that that's what I was hoping you'd say, but I wanted that to like that's the argument, and it happened recently because of all this stuff when Aaron Judge broke.
Mm.
They were making a big deal like he's the home run king now. I'm like, dude,
Dude,
no, he's not.
I can take
Like,
away
doesn't
I can
matter.
take away his 73. I can take away his what was it, 771 or whatever it was,
Seven
something like
sixty two.
760. Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
I can take those away. You take, he's still going to have an aggregate of home runs. He's still going to have, a season tally for home runs. Let's say he hit 50 home runs and hit 500 home runs total.
Hmm.
You look at the collective body of work outside of that. You look at the collective defensive work that guy did. You look at the collective opinion of him as a teammate. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't give a shit that the guy hit 73 home runs or 762 on steroids. I really don't, because you'll look at guys in magazines and people will fawn and oogle and women will want them. And it's like, well, that's steroids. And, you look at a guy who's hyper powerful in business and he looks 50 when he's 75 and he trains hard and he has money and this, that, and the other. And we respect that and we love that.
Hmm.
That's TRT,
Yeah.
and you go down all these lines. I'm a 30-year-old guy that plays rec league dodgeball. I'm allowed to be on testosterone,
Hmm.
but a 30-year-old male in the major leagues with 162 games a year is
Getting paid
not.
tens of millions of dollars to be
Right.
the
To
best.
put your happy ass in the seat and clap for
Yeah.
his happy ass.
Yeah.
Listen here, you stupid. Listen, I'm about to go off. All right. I am about to go off and I'm not going to. So, um,
But the thing with Barry was like people forget when he was in Pittsburgh, like
dude, that's when I fell in love with him.
he
Him and
was
Bobby
all
Bonilla.
he was already unreal. Like
Yeah.
people were already talking about him being like, dude, this guy is he could be one of the best hitters of all
Barry
time
Bonds,
before
Bobby
even
Bonilla,
yeah.
Sid Bream. Dude, those guys,
Dude,
they
Bobby
were
Bonilla is the
dirty.
best contract ever, by the way.
Oh,
I
Bobby
think
Bonilla.
Bobby Bonilla Day is coming up pretty soon, I think
Yeah.
it's sometime in March.
Yeah. He
And it's
negotiated a lower payment because they were in some financial trouble with the Mets. So he's like, look,
yeah,
I'll take this amount, but you got to pay me over the next 30, 40. He got a deal kind of like
it was
Allen
because of the
Iverson did.
Madoff stuff. Like
Yeah, it was.
with all the owners being of the
Yeah.
Mets being good friends with Bernie Madoff, and they like got into some deep stuff with him. And so yeah, it's like $1.1 million every year for like
Yeah.
30 years or something like that,
Yeah.
and he hasn't played since 2009 or something.
Well, see, Allen Iverson had a deal with Reebok where he, somebody knew him and was able to guide him, even though he was kind of wild and reckless in his younger days,
Yeah,
and said, you've got to set yourself up for future. So I think he allotted these huge bonus payouts that had accrued over 20 years
hmm,
from Reebok to be paid out at 35, 50, and 65. So every one of those payment dates, he's got like 10 to 25 million dollars coming.
yeah,
So, and he's talked about it. He was like, I blew all my money. I had no direction in life. Once basketball was gone, I didn't know who I was and I spent more money. And he was like, the only thing that saved me was that structured contract, because then at
yeah,
35, he gets a lump sum. He's back on his feet. He's fine. But it's interesting because Ricky Williams had that deal with Master P,
Mm-hmm.
that was like only performance based. Like
Mm-hmm.
if he didn't bang out, he was not getting paid.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked the idea of it when it happened. Like I thought, man, this is awesome. But then Ricky kind of got stunted for 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
because he had some injuries and stuff. So the money thing in baseball is kind of strange. But people, listen, it's as old as the dawn of time. The guy that could throw the rock the farthest, the guy that could free dive off the highest cliff. We do not get excited about suck. Like we just don't.
Yeah.
You've got a guy running, a 9.59 100 meter. You take 10, 12 guys away from that field and you put 12 guys up there that run a 13 seconds. Like nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
So whether it is to the point where I knew guys in in weightlifting, and I won't say the team or the name, and this is overseas, they would they would kill a goat at a certain particular time of the year because it had more hormone in the blood. They would take the blood and they would let it dry, and then they would scrape it off of this thing, and they would either eat it or snort it, and they would get uptake on this stuff.
Holy
So,
cow.
folks, yes, you can put exogenous testosterone in your body and up your blood testosterone, or you can do something like they were doing with those goats, or you can take blood out of your body, put it in an IV bag, and inject it later. I
Yep.
watched a dude at the weigh-ins at the WPO make weight because they were draining blood from his arm. Like
Oh
these
my.
people will go to whatever
Any
length
length. Any length.
to win.
Yep. Yep.
And if it is not testosterone or a peptide or a hormone altogether, if it's eating pig shit and, doing whatever, like they're going to do it. So I'm not saying that that has to make you feel good, but I would just like to take the veil back. Wrestling is entertainment. Pro athletes use steroids. Like, let's just call it what it is. I'm not saying that there aren't a few outliers that don't. I am just saying that every one of those guys that you look at and you say, if you hit 20 home runs, we'll pay you $4 million. If you hit
Yeah.
30, we'll pay you 12. They are going to exercise whatever means necessary to figure out how to hit 10 more home runs. I
And by the
promise you.
way, tell me a more fun time to watch baseball ever than like 98 to 2005. Like,
Another controversial statement that is fact: steroids saved baseball.
oh, the
Post
best.
strike, without
Mm-hmm.
McGuire and Sosa in that home run battle. Thank you, Victor Conte and Balco Labs, for the entertainment and the sponsorship. Baseball was a dying breed. They were playing with minor leaguers. They were playing with utility workers and construction workers that had made it through college and whatever. And I'm not saying that those guys didn't have talent. There is nothing like watching a guy throw from the warning trot, one skip it to home and throw a guy out. These guys were one hopping it to second base.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not a cut
Right.
on their character, it's just a cut on their performance. Human beings like performance, women like good-looking men like good-looking women. People, like all this crap of trying to
Mm-hmm.
tell you that, well, you know what, slow people should be in the 100 meters in the Olympics because it makes us feel better. Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
competition is
Exactly.
to be won, and somebody will win no matter what. They'll do whatever it takes. So,
I remember because it was it was like cut into programming when Barry was on the like when he started getting to like
mhm.
68 or 69 or whatever, whatever it was. Like it would cut away from like network news, or it would cut away from whatever primetime show was on to get his at bats. Like that has never happened since. And
you know,
they tried to like recreate it with Judge, but nobody
yeah,
cared.
no,
Like it
and I think
wasn't, and because everybody knew.
the thing that I heard a guy talk about, he does some radio out of Boston, and he was talking about Judge. Could have been some hate because he's a Yankee, but he was talking about it in that same regard. He was like, I don't know if the world is just more tuned out, if
Yeah.
baseball has changed, if free agency has changed baseball to the point that you don't care. But he did make the point. But what he was saying was he felt like the reason that the media was so largely behind Judge was the fact that it would overwrite the
Yeah.
fact that, oh, the good guy won. The
Right.
bad guy didn't win this time.
Right.
And, again, baseball is a funny sport with all the things that have been legal in the sport. I mean, you've got the guy that threw the no hitter on LSD. You've got
Spitballs and methamphetamines in the 60s. I mean,
cocaine.
like just
Well,
everything.
smoking in the dugout. I mean,
Yeah.
baseball used to be a man sport, in the sense of like it was rugged and tough, and they drank whiskey in the clubhouse. They smoked in the on deck circle, and I mean, I'm not saying that it should be that, but I'm saying as adults who still get shocked when celebrities cheat on their spouse, adults who still can't believe that an athlete would risk $10 million to take a testosterone supplement that I can get for
Hmm.
$60 from my doctor. You
Hmm.
know, like let's grow up and act like we're not surprised by some of the stuff that is actually happening in
Hmm.
every aspect of everything
Yeah.
on earth. We're just human. So I
The
don't know, man. It's
the
it's crazy to me that people even care, but most of the people that care aren't even athletes. They're
I
just
was yeah,
they're
exactly. They
just
just
what they
want the
are.
they believe there's some sort of purity in it,
Yeah.
because it's supposed to seem like it's little league everything, and that's not what it
Yeah,
is.
well,
I was trying to remember the only thing I can think of that's even comparable to that time when, or even just as a sporting instance, like where kind of seems like everything stopped and everybody was like trying to go watch. The only comp I can think of is anytime Tiger plays on Sunday, like, or he was chasing somebody down on, you know what I mean? Like anytime that was going on, everybody's like, I don't even like golf, but I want to watch Tiger do whatever he's about to do because it's awesome.
this might age you a little bit. So I can tell you two more in my life that might jog your memory.
Okay.
When the Bulls played,
Yeah.
in the first three, and then the
Hmm.
second three, especially when they had
I
the
remember the
72 wins,
I mean, I
those
remember the last one
I
because
remember calling WGN as a teenager because they weren't showing the Bulls game that night, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I was on the phone with WGN. I was pissed as hell. Um, but then when Tyson fought,
oh yeah.
we used to get it, and my papa would cuss the TV because it'd be over in one round. He's like, "I paid $50, and you sit here and kicked his ass in 13 seconds." Like but we bought it every
Yep.
time. Like
Yep.
that was my papa's big deal. He loved boxing. We watched Friday Night Lights all the time,
That's
and
cool.
but yeah, those things, and I'm sure Ali was like that. I'm sure you had Liston and Foreman and those guys. Boxing used to be way cooler,
Yeah.
especially when the mob had it.
Yeah.
Boxing was real cool.
Right. But to that point, like I can't think of anything really recently that does that
Too
in
many
in
interests, man.
sports anyways. Like there's just nothing that everybody wants to like be a part of, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to go back too. You had at certain times in this country, you had three channels, so
Yeah.
everybody was watching one of three feeds.
Yeah.
And I think now, you got a house with four kids, or father, wife, son, and daughter, and you say you got four people, you got four TVs and four different programs, none of which overlap. And that was something my granny was worried about before she died. She said, "Y'all don't watch the same cartoons that your mom and your grandpa did." And it was like there was commonality. There were
Right.
stories there. There were things that were passed down. So I think it's interesting that there's just so many choices.
Hmm.
And I think that in itself is a problem for humans, is the paralysis by overanalysis. We can't collectively rally for that one thing because you've got your thing and I've got mine. I just don't
Hmm.
know that we're as unified in what those sports symbols or the symbology of the act of hitting the most home runs in baseball. I don't know that they mean the same
Yeah.
in the piece of the pie of what Americana is. Like used to be, Maris was like a pretty common household name. I mean,
Yep.
everybody knew he hit the home run record.
Yep.
Or maybe I'm just, thinking that, but it seemed like it was a common thing. Everybody knew Babe Ruth. Everybody knew Michael Jordan. I don't know if everybody knows Patrick Mahomes or,
Right.
I don't know. Dude, I can't name one Kentucky basketball player this year. Like the one and done bullshit killed me on college basketball.
Yeah.
And Kentucky is one of the leaders of that. I grew up at a time when Kentucky basketball, three to four of the starters, and this was everywhere. This wasn't just Kentucky, but Kentucky was proud of the fact that we won national championships with two to three, maybe four kids homegrown in Kentucky. You had Darren Feldhouse, you had Richie Farmer, John Pelfrey, Jamal Mashburn, Todd Svoboda.
Jamal
Like
Mashburn.
you had those guys that kind of like it was at the peak of my interest in Kentucky basketball, and then of course through high school and stuff. And then they went to the one and done. Like there's no loyalty, and now the the stuff where kids can change 3 colleges in 4 years. They get paid. I mean, there's a freshman 17-year-old kid coming to Tennessee already worth $12 million in endorsements. It's like,
Unbelievable.
how do you coach that kid
Yeah.
when the coach is making $150,000 as a strength coach? How do you tell a kid that's worth $12 million before he ever met you to believe in what you're saying to do?
Right.
I'm not saying that the kid shouldn't get paid. I was at UK when they started giving the kids some of that money initially, and for better or worse, that Friday they would get the money. Monday morning, you'd see the tattoos and canes wrappers in their car. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not spending their money on shit that they wanted them to spend it on. They're
Yep.
spending it on the shit that 18-year-old and 19-year-old kids spend it on.
It's
So,
so funny, dude.
yep.
I think people would be blown. I mean, this was even before the NIL stuff. I think people would be shocked about how much money was changing hands in college athletics that was just under the table. I mean, like everybody tried
Dude.
to get it. They took Reggie Bush's Heisman away for
Yeah.
crying out loud, and like that was maybe
Look what the
not even the most.
Kardashians did to him. They took his
Oh my!
Heisman.
They unbelievable. Took his Heisman. They vacated wins. Like that was the dumbest thing. But I remember when it was just a couple years ago when with all the NCAA basketball coaches when there was like that trial going on when there was
Yeah.
like the wiretapping of the Arizona coach and
Yep.
all that stuff.
Rick Pitino was doing some dirty work. Yep.
Yep. But they had talked like they had brought to the one of the facts that had come out was like the starting point guard for Creighton, like Creighton, was pulling in $100,000
Oh yeah.
in like these under the table deals, and we're like, dude, Creighton starting point guard. Like, if you think that the dudes at like what Zion was getting when he was in college, and like any of those guys that go to the actual schools that are known for college basketball, like you're just willfully ignorant. Like you are, what's his name from the Matrix that wants to
Well,
go
so
back in.
I worked at OSU when Tressel was there and Terrell Pryor and those guys were there. So a lot of that stuff, Tattoo Gate,
The
remember that? They
tattoo
were,
gate, that was so stupid.
I mean, really, like you go, like, I'm going to be honest with you right now. Some of my tattoos are from when I was powerlifting and I would go in there and, the guy would be like, hey man, on me, just want to give you a tattoo. He's like, maybe you can sign a shirt and we can hang it in the shop or something. Dude, I did that.
Yeah.
Like I did those exact same things.
Yeah.
Not like, oh man, I'm doing something sneaky here. I'm signing these footballs for free ink. It's
Right.
like you walk into a shop and somebody's like appreciative of what you do. They want to give you a piece of what they do because, like the guy at the tattoo shop. And I've watched all your videos. I've learned how to squat because of yours. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
that $150, $200, whatever the tattoo cost, in his mind was worth the trade-off of saying thank you by giving me
Yeah.
a piece of his art. And I'm not saying everybody should do that every single time. I'm just saying those are things that I am aware of that have happened to me that at a scale level of top 10 collegiate football player, like, I mean, they either need to do a better job of guiding these 18-year-olds through their existence or understand that they're going to do stupid shit,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but again, all of that stuff is like, you look at that, you look at Pryor getting in trouble, or Reggie Bush getting in trouble for some of the things that are now just accepted, and like now
Mm-hmm.
the colleges are paying them,
Yeah.
instead. So
They're just
just
flat
give
out
it 5 or
saying they
6
are.
years, guys. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
It'll be
Uh,
fine.
I wanna close it out, but I just want to read you. There was two comments that came up on YouTube from the baseball talk that I thought were pretty funny.
All right.
Uh, One of them was Bonds would hit all them homers anyway. They just wouldn't have gone as far.
Exactly.
And then
Amen.
the other one was listening to John Kruk talk about the Phillies dugout and locker room in the '90s was awesome. And those
Lenny
stories are
Dykstra, Dutch
great. Yep.
Dalton, John
Yep.
Kruk.
Yep.
Oh my God, dude.
Those
Mitch
stories are so
Williams,
good.
Wild Thing.
Yep. Those
Oh, I can
stories
get
are
on a
so
base.
good.
I can do a baseball podcast,
We
man.
could just do a whole baseball show
We
one day
need
and
to do
just
that.
do nothing but just say 80's and 90's baseball players' names, and then that's
Exactly.
it. Like we don't even need to talk about it. We'll just say their names.
Exactly.
So, all right, well, we'll wrap it up there. That was fun. We'll
Yeah,
do
man, it was great. And
another.
I hope if you guys watched it live, you enjoyed it. And hope if you're listening to it anywhere else, you get time for it.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
we'll be doing the lives more often. So, thank you guys.
All right. Thanks.